Hello and welcome back to the Talking Wolves Transfer Podcast, a show that looks at all the Wolves transfer news and rumours in a bit more detail. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by none other than Dave Azzopardi. Dave, I bet you haven't put the phone down today, have you, mate?
I know, it's been absolutely mental, mate. Which is good, I suppose, in a way, because we've been craving a lot of rumours and transfer news, and it's all come at once, really, hasn't it? Right before the start of the season, which I know will frustrate a lot of fans because they probably would have wanted it done a little bit earlier. But as we've spoken about before, sometimes transfers aren't that easy. But yeah, looking forward to it again today, mate. Some interesting players to talk about.
There is, and we did one episode of this before, and it worked really well. And we would hope to have brought you on sooner. But as soon as that episode was released, I think we must have had about 2 or 3 rumours, and a couple of those weren't very credible at all. So, hopefully you enjoy this one. Let us know what you think in the comment section down below. But Dave, let's get straight into it because there's a lot to go through. First one today, mate. It broke earlier today via Sky Sports News. Was a link for Chelsea centre forward Michy Batshuayi. Now, he's been at Chelsea for a number of years now. He had a big money move there. Been on loan at Palace and Besiktas last season, where he scored 14 goals. Said not to be a part of Thomas Tuchel's plans. TalkSport also affirmed Wolves' interest and expressed that Wolves are in advanced talks. Dave, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because he's always a player that you see very loosely linked with a lot of Premier League clubs, because it's almost ever since he was sold to Chelsea, he's never really been a solid part of their front line, has he? But again, I think that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of fans are sort of turning their nose up at this, is the fact that he's never really solidified a place over the last few years. But if you actually look at his numbers, they're really, really solid. During his time at Palace, he's had 2 loan spells there, obviously been at Chelsea. All the minutes across those years, I don't know how long he's been at Chelsea, 5 or 6 years, all the minutes at Palace and Chelsea actually only equate to 25 Premier League matches in full. And in that time, he's got 20 goal contributions, which is, if you said, oh, right, you're going to be signing a player that's got 20 goal contributions in 25 games, you're going to be really impressed. 15 goals and 5 assists. And even Besiktas last season, 14 goals, albeit I would say the Turkish league is slightly lesser than the Premier League, but on average a goal every other game, and again 19 goal contributions overall. So he's a player that knows where the net is, Matt. Even at Borussia Dortmund, he had a loan spell a few years ago, had a really prolific spell there as well. And just a quick look again, I know YouTube it always shows the players' best moments rather than their worst moments, but he just seems to be the type of player that a good striker is just instinct, and it knows where the ball is going to be or where the ball is going to go. And he does seem to have that. And I think with the new positive attacking formation that Wolves seem to be going with, fingers crossed for next season, I think it could, a player like Batshuayi, who I think will be happy to sit as a rotation option for Jimenez, I think it would be a decent option.
Yeah, I think there's a popular misconception that because of his physique and his build, that he's almost a target man. And from what I've watched him and from doing a bit of research on him, he's not really that kind of player. He's good with the ball at his feet in terms of going past players, but in terms of his back to goal, he's not great at retaining possession. He's he's more of a fox in a box than around the 18-yard box. He's fairly clinical. And perhaps that's what Wolves need. We need that presence in the area, because I know last season there were numerous occasions where we got into good positions and you look into the 18-yard box and no one was in there. But pre-season has shown that Wolves are committing more bodies forward. So I would be happy with this, mate. I had a bit of time to think about it today. Initially, I thought, it's just going to be another journeyman. But I've had time to process it, and I think it would be a smart bit of business. He's out of contract at the end of this season. It's going to be a loan. Chelsea has said to be happy to pay some of his wages. If you were Wolves, Dave, would you be saying to Chelsea, we would like an option to buy Batshuayi in this? Because you know what's going to happen if he has a good start to the season. He could leave Chelsea on a free at the end of the season. His destination might not be Wolves. If we say to Chelsea, I don't know, we're option to buy 8 million, 10 million, which is probably what he's worth as a fly now. it gives us the option in January to almost trigger that before anyone else can. I know we can then, of course, speak to European clubs in January, but something for Wolves to think about.
Yeah, that would be a wise option, and I think like we know with Wolves ever since, even before Fosun came, and it's so very rare that Wolves would sanction a loan deal without that sort of first refusal, you could say in this case. But yeah, we've seen it with a number of clubs, such as Jesse Lingard is one that springs to mind. Had a fantastic breakthrough season at West Ham. And because they didn't have the option to buy, or at least I don't think they did, he stayed at United, and now he's sort of gone elsewhere now as well a couple of years later. So I think it'd be wise for Wolves to get first refusal on this. But like you said, it's a player that I've not really looked into it. I've never warmed to him just because I just never thought he'd be a player that Wolves would go for one reason or another. But yeah, I think his numbers are good, and I think it would be an interesting option. There's certainly a number of players that are a lot worse that Wolves could be looking at right now.
I agree, and it's always nice to be linked with someone who's affectionately known as the Batman. You can,
nice Talking Wolves t-shirt design in my head.
The pound signs are rolling in the back of my eyes. I'm already thinking about it, but no, he's affectionately known as the Batman, of course, taken from his name, Batshuayi. Still 28, Dave. Should be coming into his peak years now. We both agree that this is, if it happens, and if it's believed that Wolves are in advanced talks, which is what Alex Crook has said from TalkSport. Again, not sure how true that is. I know that he broke the news about Renato Sanches when Wolves were looking to sign him. Of course, that deal didn't happen, but we do know that he was having a medical over Zoom, so he must have some sources. So, what do you reckon, Dave? Do you think there's a possibility that this could happen?
Oh yeah, I think definitely it would work. It would work for Wolves. It's been confirmed by fairly reliable sources that like Liam Keane had spoken today about this sort of shortlist that Wolves have got, and he's one of the players on there. I think it could happen, and I think it's something. I know I said to you sort of a little bit earlier on today that I wouldn't surprise me to see if it accelerates and he could be in the squad for Leeds. I think that's possibly a little bit too soon. I think you're right there, but. It's something that the move seems pretty straightforward. Wolves need a striker. He obviously wants a move. It's always difficult with the World Cup window coming up because I don't think he's not a shoo-in for the Belgian squad, but he's certainly obviously going to be an option there. So he just wants game time however he can, and he's got an opportunity if he can knuckle down over the next week or so. If we get the signing over the line, he can knuckle down. He's got every right to have a run of 2-3 plus games before Jimenez would be back from injury.
He's one of two Belgian strikers who've been linked with in as many weeks. If you had the choice now, Dave, you take Christian Benteke on a season-long loan or Michy Batshuayi, who would it be? I know you do like Benteke. You've walked him, haven't you?
I think I'd be warming slightly more towards Batshuayi rather than Benteke.
Good stuff, mate. Before the comments go wild, I remember when we were out in Benidorm when we recorded the transfer podcast. And we were talking about Benteke, and some bloke wandered over to me and said, "Tell your mate over there, he hasn't got a clue what he's on about Benteke." I won't use a phrase that he used, but he wasn't very good. So, moving on
desperate,
now, Dave.
Just desperate for forward options, that's all.
Just desperate for rumours.
Yeah.
We'll take what we can get. Moving on now, Dave, though, to a rumour that was that broke today, and it's a shocking one aspect, but also we kind of felt it was coming somewhat, and that is that Conor Coady is wanted by Everton. The news was first broke by Alan Myers, and then it was closely followed up by the Express and Stars Liam Keane, who confirmed that Wolves would be open and could be open to a Coady leaving the club this summer, whether that be a loan move or a permanent move. Yet they have not had an official offer. If he did move to Everton, it means he's closer to his family who still live in Merseyside. I think they still live in Widnes. And it would, of course, seem team back up with Kevin Thelwell, who's their sporting director. Dave, the writing was on the wall with the back four, but it still seems a bit of a shock to me.
There's a lot of aspects in this, Matt, that make sense, don't make sense. Good for Coady, bad for Coady, good for Wolves, bad for Wolves. So it's quite almost not confusing deal because I understand it from Cody's viewpoint. In the back four, it's obviously Kilman and Collins, as far as we're aware at the moment, are the players that are preferred. A lot of people outside of the Wolves fan base are surprised at this. because obviously they haven't really been keeping tabs on to how we're doing in pre-season. We spoke a little bit about him and his situation on the pre-season podcast in a way as well, and unbelievable captain, unbelievable leader. I would argue that during my lifetime he's the best captain Wolves have had in terms of how successful the club have been, and he's probably been pretty much side by side in that. But for him, from his personal point of view, of course, he's going to be wanting to get some sort of game time because it's possibly one of the only opportunities he's going to get now to play at a World Cup before, for the final time, possibly. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him there, but in 4 years' time, is he still going to be playing at this sort of level in the Premier League? I'm not so sure. So he's going to be wanting to play football. Everton, Frank Lampard's been known to have and use a back five before, but then you've got his personal, affiliation with Liverpool and so on. So it's a difficult one. And then from Wolves' point of view as well, there's been talk of maybe even a loan deal, which again, I know a lot of fans have been frustrated with. From a sort of Wolves being loyal to Coady sort of side of things, I get it in the fact that, right, we really want you to go to the World Cup, but we can't give you game time. But because you've been such a loyal servant, we'll just do whatever we can to find you a club. Fair enough. But when we're in this time where, if our money was endless, then fair enough, but it's not, is it? So unless it's a really hefty loan fee with some sort of option or obligation to buy, it's got to be a permanent move if Coady was to go this summer.
That's it, mate. And, the next time the World Cup comes around, he'll be 33, he's 29 now. The next one's in 2026, which is in America. Well, North America, which would be fantastic. You're right, Dave. And, there is no time for sentiment in football. And, last time I checked on the front door at Molineux, it didn't say Samaritans. Like, we're not a charity and we're in desperate need of cash to raise funds for other transfers. And he has been an absolutely wonderful servant to the club. And we were both saying off air before, we couldn't love the bloke enough. We couldn't love the bloke anymore. He's just wonderful. He just personifies what the club should be about. But unfortunately, football, you have to be ruthless at the top. And it would be a real shame if he was to go. But you completely understand it from Wolves and Coady's viewpoint. Coady will want to be playing football. Wolves can't guarantee it, and it would be sad. But Dave, if he was to go, would you be worried about the lack of organisers in the team? Neves is quite vocal. Moutinho, Collins has come in, who's also quite vocal. But Cody's a big part of organising that defence.
Yeah, there's a lot of elements that people don't realise, obviously, behind the scenes as well. And with us losing John Ruddy, in the summer, that's one vocal, like, sort of backroom voice gone. That if Coady goes as well, you really need somebody to step up. There are teams that do well and get good wins and finish well in the league that don't have a natural leader in the squad. But I think up until now, Conor Coady has been one of the biggest reasons why we've done as well as we have done. Even if you don't rate him so much as a player, I think his voice on the pitch and off the pitch has been a huge part of it. But now this is Bruno Lage's summer to put his stamp on the team. And this was bound to happen, something like this, And for me, one of the only reasons we were playing a back five was to
accommodate Coady.
Yeah. I was going to say shoehorn, but that's a bit harsh. But to accommodate Conor Coady, and then if Bruno Lage wants to play the way he wants to play, then yeah. My only reservation is, Matt, that if we start the season badly, the first 2 or 3 games, and Bruno has to switch to a back five, obviously you're going to want Coady to be a part of that, and that's why potentially this deal might drag on towards the end of the window.
And from Liam King's article for the Express Star, it does say that Wolves will be led by Coady in this, and I think there is that mutual respect there. I said on the last podcast, mate, that looking at, and it's easy to make these assumptions from 10 or 15 seconds of footage, but he doesn't look the jolly fella that he once was. He's obviously very, very disappointed that he's not featuring, and the teams that have been put out against certain oppositions, he knows that he's not the preferred centre half anymore, and perhaps he maybe come to the end of his cycle at Wolves. But it would be a real shame. But you're right, Dave. If Wolves have a tough start to the season, and Bruno switches to the back five, which he hasn't discarded anyway. He said, we can play a 5, we can play a 4. It's not set in stone either one. He's perfect for that, the role he plays now. I don't think there'd be anyone in the team who would play that better, because it's not a centre half's role. It's a completely different role. But yeah, Dave, if you were to put a figure on Conor Coady to leave, what kind of transfer fee would you be looking for?
So it's hard to say, isn't it? I'd be wanting anywhere at least 20 to 25 million, I would say. I'd say 20. Because I just think I'm not saying he can't play in a 4, but I think he's limited to playing in a 5, and I think that's what Everton will be cautious and aware of. So I think probably 20 million for me. I would be open to discussion on that sort of figure.
I'm not quite sure where he fits in at Everton. I know they've got Holgate, they've got Keane, they've got Tarkowski, they've got Mina, they've got Godfrey, there's Branthwaite, who I think might be going out on loan. There's a whole host of centre halves there. But I thought Coady had a good season last season on the whole, and
It was good.
I'd probably say he's better than most of those.
Yeah, I think their issue was that fitness as well. A lot of them weren't fit throughout most of the season. Conor Coady, I know it's not like he's, he doesn't get into those duels and 50-50s for 90 minutes, but he remained pretty consistently fit, and he has done throughout his whole Wolves career. So I think that would be a big plus for Everton as well.
Dave, if Everton were to come in for Conor Coady and they said we want him on loan, with a loan fee of £5 million, with the obligation to buy for 17.5 million at the end of his loan, what would you say?
I'll talk about it. Yeah, I think I'll probably say I'll probably say yes. I think
£22.5 million for an England international.
Yeah, currently you've got the options there. You've still got Bolly in the squad. You've still got the likes of Totti. You still got Mascara if you wanted to. I think with the little bit of money you've got there, you're probably bringing another centre half on loan. Yeah, I'd certainly be open to that.
Wonderful stuff. We'll of course report back on that if we do hear anything. Keep an eye on Talking Wolves Twitter.
But I know that we'll have comments about that. But it's such a fragile. I know it sounds sad, but it is a fragile topic because it's a very I was going to say love-hate, but there is a lot of people that are open to it. But I know there's some proper Coady diehards, so I understand their point of view as well. But I know we'll get thoughts on that as well.
There's also some Coady bashers which I don't really understand. And I think that he does. I'm going off a slight tangent. I think he deserves to be treated with a bit more respect than some people. Some people speak about him online because it's fair enough if you don't think he's right for the back four. I'm of that opinion. But to say that he's shit and he's no good and he's rubbish, I don't think that's true. And he's been a great servant for us, and I think he deserves a little bit better. But I'm sure that's a topic for another day. Moving on to another Wolves player, though, Dave. It's the ongoing saga that involves Morgan Gibbs-White. So the Athletic reported yesterday, Steve Madley, Wolves correspondent, that Nottingham Forest have now had at least 2 offers rejected by Wolves from Morgan Gibbs-White. The latest offer came after Forest's owner, Evangelos Marinakis, intervened to hold discussions with senior counterparts at Molineux. Wolves do expect Forest to submit a third bid for Gibbs-White, set to be in the region of £30 million. Wolves' stance is that he's still not for sale, and it would take a bid north of that figure to change that. Dave, I'm going to go straight in and ask you a very serious question. How much does it take for Gibbs-White to go to Nottingham Forest?
I would.
Sorry, mate. I'm asking all the tough questions.
No,
I see you're not asking me.
No, I would strongly consider that £30 million bid. I would seriously consider it. As people know, I'm a fan of Morgan Gibbs-White. I think he's had a good preseason. He had a good preseason last year. Had a good season overall last year, and I think he can add a lot to this Wolves team. But his value right now is sky high. If he plays for Wolves and has a poor season, that's just going to, drop significantly again. So, yeah, it's one of those. It's a difficult decision for Wolves to be in. The only way I think I would sell is if I know I had someone of equal, if not better quality, lined up for a similar sort of value. Whether that be a winger, because obviously we've seen Morgan be playing out on the right, or whether that be your central midfielder, such as Matheus Nunes, who, we have been linked with so heavily. So yeah, 30 to 35 million, it's got to be. Forest seem adamant on it. I don't know where they're getting this money from. It's a huge risk from them, obviously, to be bringing in all these players. But yeah, it's it's got to take that sort of bid for Wolves to consider it. I do agree on that front, and I'm glad they're being, they're standing firm on it as well.
Yeah, and you see other players going for like ridiculous fees. It never seems to be us who, take take someone to the cleaners in terms of a big club. I know Forest aren't. I won't say they're not a big club because that people will moan, but they're not a traditional big six, are they? So it's a strange one. The thing that resonates for me, Dave, is that they obviously understand that there's an interest from the player too, and the fact that he's not signed a new contract, whether that's because he wants to see how he starts the season, whether he's going to feature with Wolves, or whether he does want this move to Forest, concerns me a little bit because there's no way that they'd be keep going in and keep bidding in. There wasn't any indication from the player that he would be keen on the move.
I think he's open, and I think he's not said it publicly, but I think he's not made any sort of. I think he's made that pretty obvious that he'd probably be open to a move away. But at the same time, he's open to staying at Wolves. I think I've said before, I think Wolves and Bruno Lage need to do quite a little bit to convince him to stay. That's probably why we've seen him play so regularly as part of the first team. I think he'll start at Leeds. He's been given the captain's armband for some games already in pre-season. So I'm pretty adamant Bruno Lage wants him to be part of this team and this setup. But at Forest, he's got links there. He's got Steve Cooper, the manager at Forest, who obviously managed him in the under-17s World Cup. He knows his qualities. So I'm still right at present. I'm still comfortable and confident that he'll stay at Wolves. But money talks and things can change really, really quickly.
Yeah, we'll keep our eyes peeled on this one. I feel like this one is going to drag on. One thing that Wolves cannot afford to do is wait until the last few days of the window to accept a bid, unless it's absolutely ridiculous money. Say if it's £40 million, then they wouldn't have a choice. But it's I feel like this one's going to continue to run, mate. Forest obviously want their man. But I feel like if Morgan has a good start to the season at Wolves, and the propaganda has been peddling anyway, giving him the armband, all the content around him, I think Wolves are making a real conscious effort to show to Morgan, look, this is your home, and we know that you've had your fingers burnt in the past, but this is your home, and we want you to stay. So I think it's one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on now, mate, to another forward who has been linked with Wolves. This one came from L'Equipe in France, which is a really reputable source. It's South Korean international, and the teammate of Hwang Hee-chan, it's Hwang Oi-jo from Bordeaux. Wolves have reportedly offered around €3 million for the forward. The French club have found that offer insufficient, and negotiations are continuing. I know it's also been reported by the Athletic, Express and Star and a few others that Wolves have genuine interest in the player. Like I said, he's an international teammate of Hwang Hee-chan, averaged just over a goal every 3 games since he joined Bordeaux from Gamba Osaka. Scored 11 in 29 last season for Bordeaux, mate, despite being relegated to League 2. Liga 2, if you were. Yeah. Thoughts on this one, Dave? It's come out the blue, but from a commercial point of view, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, of course. And this one has probably got a lot more negativity towards it rather than the ones such as Batshuayi that we spoke about earlier on. And I said to you earlier, I think genuinely it's because he's Korean, and not in the fact, more of the fact that obviously we saw Hwang come in last year, started off okay. We saw the commercial boost for the club, and then he petered off. But the club made it pretty obvious that Hwang sort of was a commercial signing. So I think the reason that we're linked and potentially looking at another Korean is what's wound fans up, because they know it's almost a commercial signing. If this was a player of any other nationality or European nationality, I don't think people would be that bothered. Just in terms of his numbers are actually okay for, like you say, a lesser team in Ligue 1. The last 2 years, he scored 23 goals. Last season, he got a goal contribution every 2 games, which, again, I don't think is too bad at all. And Wolves could take advantage. I know we've spoken a little while ago, and obviously it's not a move that Wolves have been remotely linked with Ahmed Hodzic, who was at Bordeaux last season, and they couldn't afford him just because of their finances. Because they got relegated. I thought they got relegated to the Division 3, Matt. So maybe they've been brought back into Division 2. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that they're Ligue 2.
Yeah, so I don't know what happened there. Oh yeah, they appealed it and they got put back into the second division. There you go. So yeah, for a team that finished rock bottom last season and he still got double figures, that's okay. And I saw people comparing it to Timu Pukki. At this current stage, I would take someone like Timu Pukki anyway.
Maximum, mate.
So yeah, so I'm not overly against it. I think it would probably take 5, 6, 7 million euros, which was spoke about today. If I had to take him or Batshuayi, I think I would choose Batshuayi. But again, like I said earlier, there's worse players out there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've not seen a lot of this player, admittedly, but of course, when these rumours break, I go and have a read, go and have a watch. And it's interesting that during his earlier years at Bordeaux, he was deployed as a winger. And I thought that seems strange because looking at his stature, he's 6'1", looks quite a big bloke. But it turns out that he's no slouch and he does have a real good turn of pace once he gets going and has a real direct style of play. Fantastic in the air as well. So is he the man that Wolves have identified as that big archetypal number 9, or is he just someone who has that option to play across the front three?
Yeah, I think again he is versatile, like you said. I didn't realise he was played as a left winger. I did see obviously his goal numbers for that first season were a little bit lower, but obviously that's obviously why. I know his aerial duels number, like his percentage, isn't actually that high, Matt. So I don't know if that's just with how Bordeaux were playing. I don't know, but obviously he's a little bit taller, a little bit more experienced. He's sort of the other side of his peak now, I would say as well. So I don't think this is going to be a long-term deal for Wolves, but I don't think any of these strikers that we're going to look at or be linked to are going to be long-term deals. I think the long-term plan would obviously be to bring Fabio back and try and get him in the front line eventually. So all of these are short-term fixes. I think he'd be okay for what we need. And again, I think he'd be somebody that would come in and happily play second fiddle to Jimenez, whilst giving you that commercial boost as well, which I know people hate to hear.
Yeah, I think it's important to reiterate that they're not just signing him for that commercial boost. So obviously
Of course not.
identified a player in there. Same with Hwang, who I think will have a better season this season. They've identified that the player can do the job. But for example, if you're looking at the same kind of transfer fee wages for an Italian bloke or a South Korean bloke, completely the same ability, you will opt for the South Korean because their fans are notoriously tribal, and you've seen the kind of boost that such as the Wolves YouTube have had since signing Hwang. So it makes sense from that perspective, but it remains to be seen. It's said that Hwang wants to join a Premier League club, so it's definitely one to keep an eye on for sure. Moving on to the next rumour, and this one is a bit of a strange one. Reported earlier by journalist Lo-Tutala that Wolves are reported close to signing former Tottenham Hotspur goalkeeper Thimothée Lo-Tutala. Now you might think, who's that? So did I. Don't know a lot about him. He's a 19-year-old who will be joining Wolves as a free agent if the deal goes through, and he has represented France at youth level. Dave, do you know much about this fella?
No, and I can't say I've not seen much about him either. But yeah, he's youth level goalkeeper, played a good number of games, and apparently was pretty highly rated at Spurs as well, Matt. So I think up until this week, Hull City were really heavily linked with him, but Wolves could take a real advantage of this, and this is almost a little bit like the Mateo Sarkic deal, where Sarkic is all of a sudden come in as Wolves number 2 now. Whether he goes out on loan and Lo-Tutala comes in as our number 2, or whether Sarkic stays and I keep having to say his name, Lo-Tutala goes out on loan, is possible. I think if Hull City are looking at him, he's obviously a goalkeeper that's League One Championship caliber. And once again, if Wolves bring him in on a free, goes out on loan, assume he's homegrown as well because he's been at Spurs for a number of years. Then happy days. I think Wolves could make a little bit of money here. So it might well be a player that comes in and goes out on loan. We may never actually see him in a Wolves shirt, but yeah, I think again, fans are frustrated about this because we link with players that we're never actually going to see play for Wolves. But this is how big clubs and how progressive clubs are going to work and make money, signing a player for nothing and selling them on, whether that be 3, 4, 5, 6 million in the future.
I think the fact that no one else has reported it and it's so left field
Yeah.
to me makes me feel like it could be one that goes through. I don't know about you, Dave.
Yeah, I think again this is something that can move pretty quickly. It's probably just a case of Wolves have got to find a suitable club to loan him out to, if that's obviously going to be the plan. But yeah, players now are going to, season kicks off. If players are still free agents, they're going to want to start seriously looking at trying to find a club now. So yeah, I think this one could move quite quickly if it comes to fruition.
Definitely, mate. And there's four more rumours that we're just going to gloss over. We're not going to go in depth as we have with the others because I don't think there's that much substance to them. The next one is Brereton Diaz, which was first reported by Football League World. Well, most recently, I know we've been linked with him before. Not a reputable source compared to the ones that we've talked about, but Blackburn striker, Stoke-born, Chilean international. You don't say that very often. 22 goals in the Championship last season. Absolutely prolific. Dave, would you be adverse to signing Brereton Diaz? I can't see it happening, and I know that Liam Keane, Phoenix Wrestling Star, kind of doubted this one earlier. He said that the minute Wolves aren't interesting, but in terms of profile, would you be happy with Brereton Diaz?
Yeah, I think he's, again, somebody that is versatile. I'm fairly certain he's played out wide, sort of on the right-hand side. Got that little bit of height to him. I actually remember watching him for on his Chile debut because I think it was when England had played Scotland in the Euros or whatever. On the evening of that day, he was playing for Chile and he scored as well. I can't believe he's only 23, Matt, because he seems to have been around for years. He was obviously at Forest beforehand, wasn't he, as well? My only sort of caution on this one is that last year was obviously his first real big season, and we have people and players that have these hot patches. So I would be cautious, but obviously he's going into the last year of his deal now. I think you can probably get get him for a decent fee. Again, as bad as it sounds, and I've bought it up 2 or 3 times commercially, I think this would be huge for the club as well. But yeah, I wouldn't be against it. And again, I think it's someone that's going to want to fight for his place and be a good option to have. But I wouldn't be able to put a value on it. I really don't know what Blackburn would value him at because they got a decent amount for Adam Armstrong, who hasn't actually done that well at Southampton. So they probably want to get a similar sort of amount for Brereton Diaz.
Yeah, but he's out of contract at the end of the season, so I think that would reduce his transfer fee significantly. Yeah, I'd be happy with him. I think he's a good player, and it could be brought in on a cut price deal. Dave, I feel a little bit queasy because we've not spoken about a striker over 6'5" in the last hour, which brings us on to Ludovic Ajorque, Strasbourg forward, 6'6" centre forward, 28-year-old, scored 12 goals and 8 assists last season for Strasbourg. It was first reported by Sky Sports News, and I think it would have been easier if Sky Sports News would have said Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool aren't interested in him because they've listed Everton, Leicester, West Ham, Fulham, Forest, Bournemouth, Newcastle and Wolves, all said to be monitoring the 6'6" forward. You love this bloke, don't you, Dave, for some reason?
No, what it is, mate, I watched... it's probably 3 or 4 years ago now. It was one of those random afternoons where I've got BT Sport on and there's some league in action and Strasbourg are playing, and I watched this guy, and you just click and see a play, like, oh my god! And I was just like, I think it was his height, and he was actually such a good footballer, and his record is actually really, really decent as well. And that height is something that we haven't had since someone like Stefan Meyerhofer, and that went quite badly. But I would love to see him at Wolves, Matt. Again, he's probably right in his peak right now, about 28 years of age. I think French forwards, people know my agenda with Italian players, but French forwards is just such a weird one because I think sometimes it's so hard to actually prize them away from France when they've been there for so long. But I would love, like you said, there's so many teams interested in him. Wolves apparently looking at him, but I would love to sign him. I think it'd be an unbelievable option. And he's actually, just with the ball at his feet, he's extremely good as well.
Yeah, I know. He's really mobile as well, isn't he? I know you see a lot of forwards, such as, we've been linked with Oniachu, who doesn't look fantastic with the ball at his feet. And, typically...
Bambi.
Yeah, he is. Typically, it's the bigger you are, the worse you are with the ball at your feet. But he actually looks technically very good. But It's reported by Sky Sports News. Not sure how reputable that is. And with the amount of clubs linked to him, it does sound like it's his agent peddling for a move, but we shall see.
As bad as it sounds as well, Sky Sports isn't actually that much of a reliable source, which a lot
Not
of people
anymore.
are
It used to be the
surprised
go-to, didn't it?
Yeah, but they're very late normally to news, really. So yeah, but fingers
It
crossed they're right
doesn't.
about the Batshuayi deal anyway.
It does, yeah, and obviously Talksport, and I know people say, Talksport aren't reputable, but Alex Crook, we know, speaks to a lot of agents. So, he's quite close to particular players. So, let's see. I don't think it helps with Sky Sports as well that they've got Sky Bet, and Sky Sports News is their medium for peddling, trying to, increase people's bets and stuff. So on certain markets, which is wrong, but we know it all happens. So I think it should be taken with a pinch of salt. Moving on to the last player that we've been linked with, who with an incoming before we go on to the final one, which is say an outgoing, may not be an outgoing, is Eldor Shomurodov at AC Milan, mate. It was
Roma.
Correct, Roma. I don't know where we got AC Milan from.
I thought they were linked with him as well, and you just got the wrong team. I don't know.
No, it's definitely at Roma, according to Gianluca Damasio. So it said that the move would be initially with a loan with an option to buy. There's quite a few teams in Italy who said to be interested in him. So there are conflicting reports. Torino said to be interested. Bologna have said to have already agreed a loan with an option to buy for €9 million. Again, mate, he's a big lump. He's a captain of the Uzbekistan national side, 6'3", signed from Genoa last season for around £16 million, but with the impressive form of Tammy Abraham struggle for first 10 minutes. What are your thoughts on this one, mate? Is it a goer?
Yeah, I like that. That one slowed down a little bit. Obviously, it was first reported at the start of the week. Again, he's another player, a little bit like the players that we spoke about earlier. Struggled for consistent game time, especially at Roma, like you said, because of Tammy Abraham. But his goals and goal contributions per minutes played is actually really, really decent. Something different, 6'3". He looks an okay player again. And it's got Wolves written all over it, alone with an option to buy. I think that would be perfect for Wolves, and it's you're not paying a ridiculous amount for him either. It's not anything I'll be against, but with the rumours going on at the moment, it looks likely that he's going to be staying in Italy.
Yeah, it's. I've watched a few of his clips again. I've not watched a lot of him, so I can't profess to be an expert, but he doesn't look too bad on the ball. There's a couple of nice turns where he's managed to get a shooting opportunity, but it remains to be seen. And a lot of people go straight to FB Ref, which is a source of a lot of stats. And I don't think it really shows the full picture, does it, Dave?
No, when a player is
test is always better.
Yeah, when a player is, I trust the eye test more, but when a player is in and out of a team a lot as well, it like skews those numbers quite considerably. Because if you're coming on with 20 minutes to go in a game, it takes some players a little while to get into the match. And if you're chasing a match, that's just going to skew your figures. And if you're coming on for 20 minutes of a game 3, 4, 5 times in a row, like your numbers are going to be disastrous compared to other players.
You nearly dropped a gash then, didn't you?
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, I wouldn't be against him. Obviously, I'd have to look into it a little bit more. But like I said, at the moment, I think he's likely to move to another Italian team.
Yeah, and I think if he's coming on to change a game and someone is chasing the game, you're going to take more risks. So with that, obviously, there's more room for error. A bloke once said to me, Dave, and it's always stuck with me, stats are like bikinis. They show you a lot, but not what you want to see. And that has stuck with me for life. It's a proper Yidar statement, but that's all I
use that in the future. That's it.
Yeah. Every time I see people saying, "Oh, he looks awful" on FB Ref, that pops into my mind. But FB Ref is still a wonderful source. Right, Dave. Last one before we completely lose the plot is Ruben Neves. Wolves are increasingly confident in holding on to Ruben Neves, if you are Portuguese, in the summer transfer window, according to the Mail. So if Neves does stay in September, discussions over a new deal can be expected, with cautious optimism on both sides that the agreement can be reached. Dave, it looks more and more likely that Neves is going to stay at the club. I think the club have misjudged the interest that they thought they would get. I know you and I were at Anfield on the last day of the season. I was crying, waving goodbye to him, thinking, you know, it's the last time we've seen him in a Wolves shirt, but it looks like we're going to see him at Ellen Road on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we will. And yeah, I think it's looking more likely that we're going to keep him. I would hope that, you know, he'll entertain contract talks, even if it's just to add an extra year on to give both the player a little bit more security, and obviously us as a club a little bit more security as well, and a bit more push if we are looking to sell him on at any point. But yeah, I think I think Wolves expected him to go, and I think Wolves expected teams to be queuing up to sign him, and that's just not been the case. And that's possibly why some of our transfer dealings have been a little bit slow, because we haven't actually got the money that the club thought they were going to be receiving, which on one hand is frustrating, but on the other hand, it's great to still have Ruben Neves, an unbelievable player, arguably one of the best players that we've ever seen in the Wolves shirt. And it's going to be great to have him again. It'd be typical Wolves to sell him late on in this window, but I think the only realistic team at the moment is Manchester United. But I've still got a feeling they're going to get the other targets such as De Jong and so on. I don't think United are going to spend the money on Neves at what Wolves want.
Dave, how much is Ruben Neves worth this summer?
You want him at least 60. At least 60.
Bloody hell, I wasn't expecting that. How much?
At least 60, mate.
At least 60 with 2 years left on his deal?
It's got to be, mate.
Oh, I don't know. I think you got your gold and black tinted glasses on there.
No. All right, 55.
59.99.
No, I'm not going any less. Oh, well, you thinking next year he's lost another year, then 30, I think is realistic. So double it, 60.
Bloody hell, is that how it works? Might get you to sell my house. I think he's worth about 45, 50 based on his current contracts and what I think Wolves would accept. But I mean, if he gets 60, wonderful stuff. Before we end, Dave, just to stir the pot a little bit, Chelsea have confirmed their squad numbers for this season, and Michy Batshuayi hasn't been handed a squad number. So all signs point towards an outgoing for Batshuayi. I know that Everton are linked with him too, but I think this one could gather a bit of momentum in the coming days. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled. That's all we've got time for today. I've enjoyed that one, Dave. It's nice to chew the fat over these and go a little bit more in depth. Dave, where can people find you should they wish?
So yeah, it's at Dave Azzopardi, DaveAzzopardi. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Fingers crossed for some more signings in the coming days.
Yeah, I mean, we hope for another day tomorrow like we've had today. Today being Thursday, because it's been excellent. That so many rumours, and it's nice to get excited. Whether or not they happen is a different thing. I am M Cooper writes. We are talking Wolves across all platforms. And let us know, guys, if you've enjoyed this and what you think of the rumours and whether you think some are goers, some are not. Let us know in the comments down below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new. And until next time, take care.